Yay! Welcome back to our 17 Lunch and Learn live session, special HR and people analytics. We are in here in LinkedIn Live. We are 3rd of October 25, and we are in the space where HR leaders, innovator, futurists, those shaping future of work are interested in order to be with us during 1 hour. We will discuss about some HR topic today. Lunch and Learn is all about the most powerful levers of transformation, that is learning, not just formal training, but the way people actually prefer to learn, the kind of learning that happens in real time on the job across generation and through meaningful coaching. So the title today topic is unlocking lifelong learning across generation. Before we dive into our main topic and introduce my guest today, I would like to delighted to welcome back George. George, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm fine, thank you very much, and hello everybody.
Thank you so much, George. We are welcome to this session today. We have an amazing guest, Dr. Joanna Eugenia Baconi. Welcome to the show, Joanna. Can I call you Joanna during this session?
Yeah, of course, of course. And thank you very much for having me. And I think, it's great to connect with everybody and, discuss about this topic. And I think that many people will relate to it in to some extent.
Absolutely. Lifelong learning is very important, interesting topic when you choose, this topic. I was very amazing because the first time during the lunch and learn we are discussing about learning, because all the topic is about leadership, it is about all HR topic, but learning is very important. I'm glad you put on the table this topic. Before we go to this this topic, I want to just a reminder, don't worry if you missed this session today. It will be recorded and will be available later on my YouTube channel. I will post after this LinkedIn Live. Let's see who is with us today. So please put your location in the comments so we can just see how our global Lunch and Learn community is. Let's pause on today's theme. Learning isn't just a benefit. Joanna, why you have chosen this learning topic, and why it's important for you?
Well, you have prepared an amazing presentation, but before we dive into the discussion and we start looking at numbers and we start looking at trends, I want to see the bigger picture, right? So what we're talking about today is not about the training programs, is not the training platforms that many organizations have. It's something far more fundamental. Help people adapt and stay relevant in a world that's changing far faster than ever before, right? And we are now in a workplace where we have four or even five generations that are working side by side. So we have colleagues who remember the world before the internet, and we have those who have never known life without Google, without TikTok, or even now without AI tools, right? So each generation its own assumptions about what learning looks like. And that's, how learning happens and what counts as valuable and, how it fits into work, right? So for some, learning is something structured, it's something scheduled, and it may be offside. And for others, it's self directed, bite sized, and squeezed between other commitments. And none of these are wrong, right? But they create different learning rhythms that organizations need to acknowledge if they want learning to land effectively across the board. And before we start the discussion, I wanted to bring in also another perspective. So at the same time, we have a pace of change that is extraordinary. So the life of skills at the moment is shrinking. New technologies emerge almost monthly, and we have to keep up with all those new technologies. And in that environment, learning is not just a nice to have. It's not a tick box exercise or something that you do once in your lifetime. It's a core capability that determines whether individuals remain resilient and organizations remain resilient, right? I think this is the point that it gets interesting, right? Because the conversation can't be about, it has to be about learning differently and more crucially about unlearning. So I think that we need, this perspective when we are discussing about learning.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for this introduction. Very important. Absolutely, we are in the age of AI. We'll discuss, to this, topic as well. We need why it's important, to learn. And the first topic that I would like to bring when we are thinking about, learning, I put in this KPMG survey that I shared on LinkedIn is the number first barrier to learning isn't technology, as you said very rightly, isn't budget or even motivation. It's time.
Hmm.
It's time. 50% of employees say they are not given enough time to focus on training. I know your workload is busy. My workload is busy as well. I'm trying, to share some, doing some of my research at the night, and I'm sharing, in the morning, my LinkedIn post. But this is just a logistical issue. It's a strategic one, if learning is the bridge between generation, as you wonderfully said, growth, innovation, and then time is the foundation. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Joanna, here's a question to open up this conversation, and you have already opened, but to go deeper, how can an organization move beyond learning as a perk and that every employee, regardless of generation, regardless of role, regardless of any function, support to truly grow in their companies?
So yeah, that's a difficult one to answer there is no right or wrong answer because, as you said, I think time is often the first wall that people hit. And I think that this is where most organizations need also improvement. And if we're honest, as you said, we've all heard that sentence. And me being in the L&D, ecosystem, I've heard it a lot in one form of another. I love to learn more, but when? Because you have like children to take care of, you have a significant other to take care of, you have your hobbies, and then you have work. And then when does learning happens if you don't have the time? And I think this is particularly complex if you put in the mix that we have a multi-generational workforce. So different generations bring different assumptions about what learning time actually means. And as I said, for some, it means formal training days at an offsite camp. And for others, it's just a short burst throughout the week. So if organizations don't set shared expectations, everyone reverts to their own habits and learning becomes optional. It becomes squeezed into the cracks of busy schedules. Oh, I have like 30 minutes between this meeting. Let me find this information that I want. And does that learning really stick? So from an adult learning theory perspective, right? And I'm thinking, of Malcolm Knowles' work here. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but adults are self-directed, but they also need relevance, they need respect of their time, and they need permission to prioritize learning. And they're not like children, they're not blank slates waiting to be filled. They are experienced individuals and they are juggling competing priorities, right? Like I said, children, house, work, hobbies, those are conflicting priorities and they all need to fit in just 24 hours. So without clear signals that learning time is legitimate within the organization, it simply won't happen. And if I can, I want also to tie it in with learning fatigue, right? Because we sometimes talk about learning as it's an endlessly elastic, right? Just give people another e-learning module, another webinar, another certificate.
Yeah.
But cognitive capacity is finite. There is a point to how much information one person can absorb. And when employees are already overloaded, no time to learn can be less about their schedule and more about the mental bandwidth, right? So I see organizations unintentionally fueling fatigue by treating learning as an add on rather than redesigning work to make learning part of the job. So I think the first step for any organization, to answer your question, is basically redesign work and making it a part of it, not just something that you put on top of it.
Absolutely. To put in the flow of work.
Exactly.
We
I think I'd like to step in there because it's not just time to provide the training, in my view, but also the time to put that learning into the right concept of
Hmm.
work to make sure that it's adding value. So we're actually putting it into context. So you need the time for the training, but I think you also need the timing perhaps to for people to sit down with their colleagues and actually put all this training into context and make sure it's being used in the right way. I don't know how you feel about that, Joanna.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that, one of the basic principles of adult learning is that, it has to be relevant. It has to be in a context that, the person can relate to it, right? So if it's not tied to their role, to their preferences, to what they actually need to do, I don't think it creates this organizational ecosystem where people can actually grow in their roles. And I see it all the time. I see organizations filling in training matrices with nice to have trainings, but at the same time, trainings that are not relevant or they are outdated. Because another issue of this context that you're now mentioning, George, is that people stick also to outdated learning. So you have this e-learning, it's in your platform. It doesn't matter if it was created 20 years ago and the operational ecosystem and environment has changed. You keep using it, right? And people don't update the learning materials to fit in the context, because I'm basically working in maritime. The industry I serve is maritime, so our operational reality is way different than the operational reality of healthcare provider. It might intersect in some areas, but at the same time it's way different. So if I create, let's say, a mental health awareness program, right, for my employees, and it doesn't tie in to their threats, the risk, the operational realities that they are facing, then they will not see, the actual value of it, right? And when I say mental health training, beat any title, right? So it's absolutely essential that training is relevant to the realities that the people are facing.
absolutely, absolutely, Jonah. And very is important. This why it's important this time to learn, because learning for me as well is impacting everything else regarding the HR. Because if someone is, as don't train and wanted to be promoted, wanted to have, a salary increase, wanted to jump to another role, the point is that did you have already, get some training about, your new role? Why I need, to promote you? Did you have new skills, etc.? So it's key, but in the term of, and there is a lot of research that I've shared as well. It's putting out that upskilling of
Yeah.
the workforce is one of the major, challenge for the HR leaders as well, or CHROs, is coming to that
Hmm.
time. The time you're not given focus on training is not no longer relevant. And as you brilliantly said, that we need, to take care. And the fatigue, the learning fatigue, is also a challenge that we need also, to take account. George, do we have, any question in the chat?
There's no questions in the chat as yet, I don't think.
We have Jose. He's asking culture of learning and clear strategy on what talent development is about in the organization and how empowered or
yeah, creating a culture of learning is equally important. And I think that, it ties into what I said earlier, that you can't treat learning as a one-off event, as something that happens just, one time and then you forget about it, right? It has to be strategic, and it also has to fit the goals of the organization, because that's another aspect that sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget, when we are building and designing a program, how it ties in with the overall organizational goals, right? So the organization and business, their goals, they have to come first if we want to create something that's efficient in the operational context that our business is in, right? So I think a culture of learning is it's equally important.
Absolutely. George, anything else?
Yeah, I'm just looking at Jose has actually put something else here. He says, where you fit in skills-based mobility and learning, and how learning and training fits with the employer's career and organizational goals. I think he's saying is, how do you fit what the employee is learning into the organizational strategy?
That's a brilliant question. And I think, so, there is, when we are designing a program, right, the first thing that you need to take into consideration is the learning objectives of the program, right? So when you're designing a program, you need to know what those people are going to learn, and you ask a specific question. So at the end of the course, what do they need to do? What do they need to know? What do they need to remember? What do they need to understand? And this falls, of course, into different taxonomies. And I think the same question needs to happen at an organizational level. So, for example, if I want to prepare my workforce for for the AI era, and how they can use AI, then I need to be strategic, and I need to tie it in with my overall organizational goals. So if I know that my company is going to invest, for example, in some AI infrastructure, then the people within the organization need to be relevant with this infrastructure, because otherwise they will not be able to support it. And also, there is the risk of fear of organizational change. And this is something that we have seen playing out whenever an organization, for example, rolls out a new initiative, a new strategy, or whatever, and people are not very well familiarized with it. They don't understand where their roles fit in with this thing. So we need to take that also into perspective. And when I'm saying learning doesn't always have to mean this extensive training that can be covered in 5 days. It can even be like a micro learning of 5 to 10 minutes. It can be it can be even an instruction, like an instruction of how you do something. So we need to think the best delivery method for the objective that we are meeting, right? So the same goes also for the organization.
So let's discuss about the other point. That is the same research that I have shared, is about struggle to find the correct and relevant online training research. And only 20% of employees say they can find relevant online learning research within 5 minutes. 30% needs up to 15 minutes. It's surprising, 90% aren't even sure how long it takes. This isn't just about convenience, it's about access, it's about autonomy, it's about momentum, about when learning is hard to find, it's hard to start as well, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to start, it's easy to postpone, to abandon maybe. And in the world where speed and relevance define engagement, accessibility is everything, And so, Joanna, is part of, open up question, but how can organization design learning ecosystem that feel intuitive, that empowering very quickly, and especially for the people that we saw just before the slide before that they don't have time.
If almost 20% of employees in an organization are spending up to half an hour just searching for something relevant, then we've already lost the momentum, right? We've already lost this employee. He or she will become disengaged, right, with the process. And I think that this matters more than we think. Okay. And, we're living in a world that we can find a tutorial or a recipe on our phones in just seconds. Okay. So clunky learning platforms send a very, clear signal to me that learning is extra work. Okay. That you need to dedicate extra work just to find the resource that you need. And I think that this struggle also plays out across different generations, just to put in this perspective. So younger employees often expect, this seamless search and smart recommendation. So basically, the same user experience that they will get from Spotify or from YouTube, right? So, and older generations, they might be more tolerant, more structured libraries of learning, but they also get frustrated when the path to learning isn't intuitive. So when organizations ignore this aspect, they are building friction into their very start of the learning journey, right? I think that, we also need to take into account the autonomy learning, as a principle. And people, they want to be able to find what they need when they need it. So if the system itself is an obstacle, it undermines the self-direction. And, one extra click, every dead end in the search result is also mental energy spent on navigation instead of absorption. So I think this energy matters, because we are all busy and we can't handle this, extra mental work. And people, many times they give up, not because they don't want to learn, but because this process is tiring before they even begin. So organizations that do this well focus less on creating more content, and they focus more on curation of the content and discoverability of the content. And I think this is the key word that we need to remember: discoverability. So they build clear taxonomies. They use recommendation engines wisely, and right now it's even more easier because many learning management systems they come in with built AI recommendation engines for the user. So this is becoming easier and easier, and also they embed learning links into the flow of work. So for me it's easier if I get a timely recommendation with a specific learning when I'm working, because I can look at it and I see, this is interesting. Okay, I might enroll in this, right? So instead of me searching something that might become interesting or I might need it in the future, the organization proactively sends me a nudge to maybe follow a course that is going to be that is going to enhance my work, right? So it feels more like a natural extension of work rather than this admin burden. But to sum it up, and ultimately the goal is to lower the threshold between curiosity and action, because the moment someone decides to learn something, the clock starts ticking, and if it takes 20 or 30 or 1 hour to find something, then that window often closes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, Joanna. I mean, one of the things that I've seen, certainly working in large organizations, is the fact that you see so much written about lessons learned But when you look at it, it's actually lessons identified
Yeah.
because that learning hasn't been structured in a way that it can be passed on to others, or it's been set aside somewhere obscure that people can't find it. I'm just wondering if you think that perhaps we're going to get to a stage whereby we're going to have people employed purely on information management to make it easier for learning.
That's a very interesting thought, actually, George. And, you know, at least what we know right now, and with the level of technology that we have, we know that AI at some point, it cannot substitute critical thinking. So what you're saying right now, it actually correlates with this critical thinking that employees and organization need to manage learning, right? So, and I think this is also a very important skill that many employees they don't really appreciate, right? Critical thinking. And in order to manage information, you actually need to evaluate whether this information is relevant and whether this information is valuable at the same time. So I think that when we are curating learning libraries, it's important to have this information curation role. And sometimes I think it's currently embedded in the L&D roles, but maybe in the future it might become a distinctive role where we will have somebody who is more focused in curating the information and screening the information rather than that being embedded in a role that it's all encompassing, right?
Absolutely. Great. Joanna, thank you for this, discussion about learning time and finding the relevant time. Now, I would like, to discuss about in the hybrid work. A lot of people, were working in the hybrid or working remotely. And let's pause here in this slide. Really, it's important, I guess. When we ask employees how they prefer to learn new workplace skills, the answer isn't just more training or how quickly they find it, is where they can they prefer to work to learn. And it's a virtual workshop learning by doing, an open courses, not passive content, but interactive, experiential, flexible format.
Mm.
This, I guess, this tells us something powerful, because they prefer to be together, to people to have a knowledge, share knowledge with together. And
Mm.
they want to learn. And that's the open question to you, Joanna, is how can HR leader and managers as co-create the learning experience that feel less like a requirement and more like a resource that employees can actively seek out across generation, across roles as well, because we're discussing about this topic is about generation as well. How a Gen Z can work with a baby boomers, etc., together in a topic that is impacted both of them.
This slide makes me smile because it confirms something that we intuitively know, but sometimes we forget in corporate settings, and that people learn best when they are engaged and not when they are just informed, right? So you see here that more than half of the respondents prefer virtual workshops, and almost half they say that they prefer learning by doing. And we've actually done in the past as Maersk Training, because we are an independent training provider, and we keep of different industries, be it maritime, oil and gas, ports and terminals, and winds and renewables. So we have a vast majority of people and learners that get trained by us, and we've seen that what you're saying right now in our own research played out. And in our research, most people preferred learning by doing. They preferred experiential settings. They preferred doing more than just, absorbing information in self-paced e-learnings. And I think that these preferences reflect two key principles. The first one is that adults value social learning, so they need spaces where they can discuss, exchange their experience, and also co-construct meaning, right? So they are not passively receiving this information; they are co-creating meaning, and they extract meaning from this information that's relevant to them. And the second thing is that they thrive on experiential learning. So I think this is at the heart, of the experiential learning theory, and we need concrete experiences, reflection, conceptualization, and then active experimentation. So people, they just don't only create this experience, but they reflect on this experience. So virtual workshops, when done well, they provide the interaction and the real-time feedback that self-paced modules often lack. And this is why we see, self-paced modules so far down in the list. And I think that they also create a shared momentum. So, this sense that, we are learning together. And, learning by doing goes even deeper. So this is where the knowledge sticks, actually, because neuroplasticity tells us that the brain uses more effectively through active engagement and repetition, not just exposure, right? So this is also important to remember, the neuroplasticity of the brain. So when people apply new concepts in real or even in simulated settings, for example, in our operational model, we use a lot of simulation, and we use, for example, virtual reality to simulate, for example, specific scenarios. And this is where we've seen that people are literally rewiring their neural pathways. And I think this what you mentioned is important in multi-generational teams, because experienced employees like Gen X or boomers or whatever, they bring this rich knowledge that can be surfaced through the discussion and through applied scenarios. And younger employees might be more comfortable experimenting with new tools, like, for example, VR or new methods. So when we are designing learning experiences that combine both the virtual interaction with hands-on application, we create those environments where everyone has something to contribute and something to gain. And it's a reminder also for us as L&D professionals that if we want learning to last, we have to design for engagement and not just for attendance. Because sometimes I think that organization they record the attendance and not the actual competence gained through the training. So to answer what you asked me, I think that organizations basically they need to adapt in these realities, and they need to understand that there is no one size fits all, right? No one learning method that can deliver the best experience. It's a blend of those methods, and each method can cater to specific learning objectives. So if you have a higher level taxonomy, so if you want your learners to apply something, then you can't expect learners to apply the knowledge just by self-paced learning. But if you want your learners just to know the basic information, then a self-paced learning might be great, right? So you have to step back and understand what is the end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the
I,
end
I
goal?
noticed Zaya's come on and said 70% of learning by doing, 20% with peer sharing social, and 10% formally. This is what we are discussing, question mark. My thought on that is that I think that is going to change, or may already have changed, with the fact that we now have people working remotely.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see, my view is, I think we'll see more online working with virtual workshops, whereas previously people were picking up implicit learning in the workplace itself. What's your view on that?
I would take that with a pinch of salt, to be honest, because the reason I'm saying that, and I'm a huge, let's say, advocate for remote work. Actually, I'm an advocate of working in the space that feels best for the employee, and there is no right or wrong answer. It can be full remote, it can be hybrid, it can be full physical work. It doesn't matter. It's what's best for the specific context always. So the reason I said that I would take that with a pinch of salt is because we have seen many organizations having a return to work mandate, right? So we have seen, in the past years, the momentum of remote work, and many organizations actually picking up this momentum and choosing remote work. But we've seen in the past year, especially, large organizations ditching this model of working and having full physical presence work implemented. And I think that there is a change in the way that we have thought remote work previously. I mean, pre-COVID, right? And I don't think that it's going to go away, but I think that organizations are kind of trying to adapt, right? And there is also a different perspective to that. I can see, that virtual workshops are also gaining momentum, not only, as tools for work-related skills development, but also for personal development. Right. So you've seen many employees who want to pick up a skill for their own personal development. It can be anything. It can be like, for example, coaching or whatever. And they prefer virtual workshops after their work time, right? So, there are many people who think, okay, I dedicate 8 hours plus 1 hour to commute, to go to work, and then I stay there 8 hours, and then I have to go back to my home, and then I have to commute again to go to this physical workshop, and they will not do it. So virtual workshops also cater to that need. We need to take that also into perspective. And I think this is why we see a rise also of the virtual workshops now for specific, physical face-to-face, trainings. I see, with the rise of this mandate of return to work, that sometimes they are used as a Trojan horse for people to return to work. Many organizations say that we have this workshop and it's a face-to-face workshop, so you need to come to work. So yeah, this is why I'm a bit conflicted of whether we will definitely see more virtual workshops. That's for sure. But I'm not sure whether they will be organization-led, organizational mandated, or they will be mandated by the people and their need to fit into their own schedules, if that makes sense.
No,
I think that brings us on nicely to another question that Jose has put up there. He says, how do you manage the need to personalize development across an organization? What do you suggest as an approach?
Personalization is something that we have been looking for quite some time, and we are now we are now discussing more explicitly as an HR community and as an L&D community, not only how people learn, but we're also discussing about neurodiversity. And I think that, personalized learning fits into that discussion of neurodiversity, because not all people learn in the same way. And for learning to stick, it has to be done in a way that fits, with the learning needs of all groups. So many people actually prefer to see something, or for example, people who have a specific ADHD, ADD, or different experiences. We know that when we deliver an e-learning and the narration doesn't match what they see on the screen, sometimes it can be very difficult to them. So I think that the best way to implement those programs is to step back and see, when you are curating a program, who is going to be your main your main learner group. So if you already know that some of the people that this program is targeted, they have some specific needs, then you need to design for those needs, and you need down of those needs. So you can't create any more learnings that are a one size fits all approach. And at the same time, learning comes down to budget. So personalization also comes down to budget. And we need to find this balance between creating different customized versions of the same learning for different groups with the budget allocated. That's a huge constraint for most of the L&D teams. But I think also another facet of the personalization that we are discussing right now is also adaptive learning platforms. So right now we have adaptive platforms that adapt the content to the level of the learner. So when they see that they have an experienced learner, they can adapt the content, and this means that this creates a different pathway and for learners to experience learning. So, for example, you may have a scenario, a troubleshooting scenario, for example, on board a vessel engine. And I'm using this scenario because, as I said, I come from the maritime industry. So you will have, like, for example, this adaptive scenario where a more experienced user might not get the same interactions as a less experienced user. And I think that this caters to those more personalized needs. At the same time, we have seen in many platforms this AI chatbot that help learners learn. And this adds a level of personalization in the learning mix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you, Joanna, for bringing that personalization. Very important, and it will be in the coming years. Very important. Subject. Organization to learn. About organization, I would like to pose on this powerful lens of how organizations are evolving
Mhm.
when it comes to learning. It's a quadrant chart from BCG researcher. It's very interesting because it maps out four types of organization learning profiles, and based on two dimensions, right? So we have based upon organization learning and AI specific learning that you just mentioned, and we have those that they are AI specific learning, organization learning, and 60% of organization fall into limited learners category. So low on both AI and organization learning. Only 15% are what BCG calls augmented learners. So high both fronts where AI capabilities and human developments go hand in hand. So it's not just a taxonomy, but it's a wake-up call for me.
Yeah.
If learning is the engine of transformation, then that most organizations are succeeding. As you correctly said, it's impacting a lot of engagement, a lot of other aspects. Joanna, what can HR and leadership do to help this shift from limited learners, that is
Mm.
majority of organization, to augmented learners?
Mm. There is a lot of buzz around AI. I think it's the trending word right now, and of course we hear a lot about AI in learning, right? So, but actual adoption is still low, and we see that here clearly. But I think that this is not a technological gap. I think it's more of a culture gap and a capability gap. And as we said, different generations approach new technologies differently. So some people, might be more comfortable experimenting with AI powered recommendations or adaptive learning, as I said previously. And other employees might be more skeptical and they might prefer trusted, structured content. And I think, that bridging this divide requires more than rolling out tools. more than just giving the tools to employee. It requires to build confidence and trust across the workforce. And from an HR and L&D perspective, AI, as we said, has a huge potential to personalize learning and reduce the search friction, as we said earlier, and provide just-in-time nudges. But AI is only as good as the strategy behind it. So if we layer technology on top of a broken learning culture, then we just amplify the problem. So we first need to build a learning culture before we start adapting it to AI, because adult learners respond best when they understand why a tool matters to them and when they feel that they have the agency to actually. So if it's positioned as a support tool, it becomes empowering than intimidating. And we've seen right now that AI can be very intimidating. So we have to be very careful of how we position as HR, how we position AI within the organization, because I think that the real opportunity isn't to chase every new trend that there is around, but it is to use AI thoughtfully and in order to make learning more human and not less human.
Absolutely.
One thing that I've picked up from that, I mean, it says AI will allow us to manage uncertainty in our industry. I'm not sure that's true, because AI is written based on the past.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be, because we're not into the future as yet. So yes, it will tell us where we are now, but do we not then need to think about how we are going to look at the future, maybe future planning for the organization, and then take that training further into basically what we don't know yet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this ties back and circles back to the discussion we had about critical thinking. And I think, I'm a huge believer that, critical thinking is one of those skills that's quite underestimated in the workforce. And we see that now playing out with AI. AI hallucinates, right? And AI can provide information that's not even factual. But if we don't have this critical thinking and this ability to question AI, then that's when the problem starts within the organization, because an organization might take decision that's based on the wrong assumptions. The risk and the real danger, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, very interesting part. Very interesting, discussion about, AI. And I would like, to discuss about one thing is very important, is the on-job coaching by manager. Because if an employee needs support or needs, to be upskill, where whom he's going, in the organization, with the manager, right? With the manager. And this the most popular form of what they call on the job training is coaching by managers. Is the first 75% of employees, they are going to their manager, for the on the job learning. And it's very, tell us, very powerful. As you said, we discuss about when it comes to learning is a flow of work. Managers matter more than any platform, program, policy. They are not supervisor. I have shared, some, research about management. This week it was a lot of things about manager. I have shared a lot of insight about manager, not supervisor. We are going super managers. We are going the learning catalyst now today with this
Exactly.
slide. And yet many managers aren't trained, aren't supported. George is a lot of time, saying that development of the manager is very important and they are not supported for that. Joanna, here's the question. What does it take to turn everyday managers into learning multipliers? How can organization build a culture that coaching is not an exception, but as a norm?
Wow, that's a powerful question. I don't think I can. I think I can take
Example.
A full day of analyzing this. But
I
no,
will
we
invite you again. No worries.
and I think, it ties in with what you said about, managers and the role managers play within the organization. Some years back, there was this huge research that was published around the effect of direct managers to the mental health of employees, and there was a direct correlation, and it showed that managers affect the mental health of employees way more than other factors that we would think. So right, and don't you think that this is a huge responsibility? So I think that sometimes we forget, when we are promoting or when we are hiring somebody for the position of a manager, the responsibility that they have on others. And sometimes we focus on the technical skills that they need to cultivate, and we focus their training on those technical skills, and we forget that those people need essential soft skills. So if we don't build soft skills into the discussions of when we are developing and when we are creating new managers, then we will never be able to foster to foster managers being catalysts for organizational learning. Right. So, and there is a very powerful quote. I don't remember who said it, but I think that it's very powerful. And it says that the measure of a leader, so how can you assess that somebody is a good leader? A good leader is somebody who has produced another leader, right? And sometimes we forget, when we are developing managers, that they are guiding the next generation of leaders within our company, right? And the leadership is not, unfortunately, you can't attend a 1 hour workshop and understand what leadership is. It takes time to build. It takes mentoring. It takes also the need to develop, personally yourself. But at the same time, you know, coaching, this on the job coaching is a very powerful two-way exchange, and it's also a way to bridge multi-generational teams, because senior employers, they have this hard-earned wisdom most of the time, and younger employees, they bring all those new methods and technologies. So on the job coaching is a way to bridge this gap, and if we guide managers, not just manage the work, and not just manage, but also coach people and be the leaders that they need, then I think that's very powerful. That's very powerful in the organization, and this is why we have seen in the past years huge organization spending huge budgets on leadership development. Yet there is research that shows that effectiveness of these programs sometimes is very limited. And this ties into what I said, because you can't learn leadership just by attending courses. It takes multiple touch points.
Absolutely.
Rita has said something here. She says critical thinking skills today is more important than in previous days.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest risk for the new generation that may not have the proper foundation simply due to over-reliance on AI. And she goes on to say, the education system has to be warned about this to adjust the education system to enhance the critical thinking and cognitive skills.
Mm.
How do you see that? How do you see what should we be getting from people leaving education and coming into the workplace? And then, are you seeing that people are younger people having to change the way they adapt to training and thinking, or how has the education system got it right? I think that's what I'm asking.
Oh, George, has the education system got it right? Yeah, I think that you will see there, like the formal education system, bachelor degrees, master's degrees, and everything. I don't think that they have caught up with the level of disruption that we are facing with AI, right? And sometimes I don't know, about other countries. I mean, I, I I assume that in other countries they face a similar situation. When you're going for a bachelor's degree, again, you're focusing more on understanding those very basic technical level skills that are being required for you. For example, accountancy and P&L sheets, the technical level. But people don't understand that you need also social sciences and the ability to learn and the ability to think and the ability to think freely and critically in order to make sense of this disrupted world. And sometimes we dismiss social sciences, philosophy, sociology, all that sciences. But what you learn through all those sciences is basically to think and to take different frameworks and apply them in context. And I think that the educational system right now is a bit broken, right? Uh, but if we need to fix it, we need to go back to why we are learning. We are learning to find out what we don't know, sorry, and what we don't know should guide the discussion and should guide our curiosity, because otherwise we are nothing more than just people who repeat the same information over and over again. And critical thinking and creativity and all those skills, they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist within frameworks and they exist in curiosity. So if you don't go back and ask why this is happening, why has this been happening, and all those questions, and then I think that, yeah, you just become somebody who knows a lot of information and can apply that in their work setting. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you, Rita, as well for the question. George, we go back, for the next session, and then you can, bring.
There is another question that's come up.
Yeah. Last one.
Sorry. How can we develop a responsive performance SOP, reward and punishment SOP in an organization? My thought towards that: why a punishment SOP? If people are not performing, what's the reason for it? Is it their fault, or is it the training they had, or is it the culture within the organization? I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Joanne.
Yeah, I absolutely agree to begin with, right? And I think I have a very unpopular opinion about it, but yeah, I'll say it. We're all friends here, so I'll share it. I don't think that the traditional performance system actually deliver what they promise. If you have, let's say, an employee and they are underperforming, just grading them as underperformer and as an underperformer doesn't mean anything to them, and it doesn't create this environment where this person will thrive, or this person will automatically say that, oh no, they say I'm underperforming and now I need to perform better. It doesn't drive performance. Those grading systems, most of the times they become just admin burdens and they become documentation tools. If we want to drive real performance, we need to ask people, what's your impact in the organization, right? What's your impact? And we need to go back, because a person who is underperforming isn't only them the issue, right? It's not, they are not silos. They exist within a specific organization. So it might be the case that the organization hasn't given those person the tools, right? It might be that they are missing some information. It might be that they can't quite work well with other people within the organization. We need to understand why this happens, right? So there's a million things that can happen that can affect the performance of a person, and we have seen that with people who we marked for situation underperformance, and in a different situation they can become like star performers, right? So this means something.
Thank you so much, Joanna. We are very late. The one
Yeah.
hour is almost finished, but so I would like to go with the review of the HR news related to our topic today. I have selected two news as usual for my guests. This one was shared by the CEO of Microsoft. This news is about Copilot. As you know, everyone is a AI tool. Is agent Microsoft AI agent is in the recent benchmark test, Copilot is excel and reached 57.2% of accuracy on spreadsheet tasks, outperforming every AI model tested and is near human. And this is not just about automation, it's about augmented performance, where AI that we discussed today becomes a true partner in decision making, in analysis, in learning as well. And Joanna, when you look at this, chart about Copilot that is going embedded in daily workforce, how you interpret that as you as a learner, learning, leaders that ensure that employees don't see these tools as a nice to have, but actually can grow. Employees can grow with them.
Well, I think that it's a wake up call that we just need to embrace those tools. And for example, in our company, we have launched this very short interactive sessions, like 30-minute sessions that guide the users in generative AI prompting. So we need to create more people that know how to use the tools, because it's basically what we see here, and it's not only it's what you feed to the AI and how you prompt it. So you have to think also about this perspective of the prompt that you're giving it. And if the people don't know this side of things, then you face the risk of people using mistakenly AI and getting information that, from a sense, they might not be relevant, or they might not be working for them.
Absolutely. Number two, news number two is about Accenture that has announced just reduce its global workforce by over 1,000 people. It's not only in the news, but some of these companies and more exit are coming for those who cannot be retrained for the age of AI. It's interesting, so the reason why they are saying so. It's just not a restructuring story, but it's about the signal that we are entering a moment where learning isn't optional anymore, it's existential. It's about the ability to adapt, to upskill, to evolve. It's becoming new currency of employability, because if you are not trained to AI, you're just out, you don't have any job.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Joanna, about this trend?
Very sobering, but it's also an important perspective, right? So I think that this reflects a broader reality, and that skills are becoming the true currency of employability right now. And organizations can't carry any more outdated skills indefinitely. And on the other hand, it highlights how critical reskilling and unlearning are to the workforce strategy. And the ability to adapt isn't just acquiring new knowledge. It's about letting go of obsolete patterns and embracing new ways of working. And I think this is exactly what we see here. And perhaps most importantly, learning systems must be designed for this disruption, but at the same time, they must be designed for humans with their cognitive limits, differences, and need for meaningful engagement in mind. So I think it's more of an existential question right now. So investigating learning cultures and investigating learning isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's existential.
Absolutely wonderful.
I have to say, Nicholas, that I was rather surprised at that particular piece. 11,000 people made redundant because they can't be trained on AI. I graduated with my Master of Laws at the age of 62, and most of that course, because I was in a full-time job as well, so I was having to do a lot of the study in my own time, and most of it was done through AI. Now I find it rather surprising there are so many people that are untrainable in the use of AI, and yet Accenture, are they not the people that go in and train other people's people to use AI? I find it really surprising.
Absolutely. No, all of us, and that's why, I have, selected today to discuss, because maybe we will see more companies like that. Before we close, Joanna, I would love to invite you to share, and I'm sure asking to all my guests, every Friday, what is your final recommendation for organization about the topic of today, about learning, or any other topic you would like, to share? It's your, closing remark.
I hated this, but I think that my advice would not be for organizations. It would be for individual learners, and I think it ties in with the last slide that you shared. And learning is eventually our own responsibility. I mean, George is a great example of lifelong learning. Actually, my father did his MBA in his 60s. He was also a very seasoned professional, so he never stops learning, and that's a great example. So in this economy and the way that technology is disrupting the economy and organizations, nobody's coming to save us, right? And the true currency of employability right now is skills. We've seen that right now, all right? So I think we need to take our learning more strategically. So my 2 cents here is exactly that. Nobody is coming to save us. We need to take our learning as a strategic investment of our future.
And good on your dad, Joanna. He's up there with me in the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a particular situation because, I was also teaching at the university, and, he was also a student, and, it was a particular situation.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Very, very wonderful, recommendation, Joanna. George, so learning still, you are convinced that you need to learn, right? Going forward.
Well, I think I made a comment on one of your posts yesterday about learning, and basically said, I'm continually learning. I learn from people like Joanna. I learn from reading things on LinkedIn, having discussions on LinkedIn, having discussions face to face with people. You never stop learning. If you want to get on, you've got to continue.
Thank you so much, George. You're absolutely right. We have passed, the 1 hour and 10 minutes. Joanna, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you. Of course, this session will be recorded. For those of you who have joined, thank you so much for your energy, for your comments. Sorry, we didn't answer all your comments, but we will try to answer after. Lunch and Learn community will come back with the replay. Will be available on YouTube page, Canal, as I said. Feel free to share with your colleagues, with everyone, to join us, in this Friday, Lunch and Learn. Next week, another guest, amazing guest. See you next week. Happy Lunch and Learn. Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you, Joanna, again.
Thank you very much.
Next Friday.
Yeah, there's been a lot for me to take away from this session, Joanna. Thank you very much indeed.